My sister's MIL used my house without permission because she knew I'd say no, so I said it. I found out there was going to be a 40-person party at my house the morning it was supposed to happen. Not the day before, not 2 days before, the morning of 7:43 a.m. I was in my kitchen making coffee in my pajamas when my neighbor Linda texted me. She said, "Hey, are you having a party today? I saw someone setting up tables in your backyard." I read that text 3 times. Then I looked out my kitchen window. There were 2 folding tables in my backyard. A woman I had never seen before was unfolding chairs. I had not put those tables there. I had not asked anyone to put those tables there. I had not agreed to host anything, invited anyone, or had any conversation about any event at my house on this Saturday in October. I stood at my kitchen window in my pajamas holding a coffee cup that I had not yet filled, and I understood in the specific way that you understand things when the evidence is standing in your backyard that something had been decided without me. I want to tell you who decided it, and I want to tell you why she didn't ask me first. And I want to tell you what I did at 8:14 a.m. that made 40 people get a cancellation text before most of them had finished breakfast. Stay with me. Subscribe right now. Because the reason she didn't ask me is the part that tells you everything about this family. And what I did about it is the part that finally, after 3 years, told them everything about me. Before I tell you about Donna, I need to tell you something that will help you understand why this matters. Something beyond the obvious. Because on the surface, this is a story about a party. And parties are annoying when they happen in your house without your permission. But this is not actually a story about a party. This is a story about the specific kind of person who looks at you and calculates, based on everything they know about you, your kindness, your patience, your habit of not making things harder than they need to be, and decides that calculation means they can use you. Not because they hate you, because they have decided that the things you won't do are not limits, they are opportunities. If you won't say no loudly, they don't have to ask. If you won't make a scene, they don't have to worry. If you care too much about keeping the peace, they can count on the peace to keep itself while they do exactly what they want. Donna knew I'd say no to a party at my house, so she didn't ask. That is the sentence I want you to hold. She knew. She didn't ask. Because she understood correctly, based on 3 years of watching me, that my not saying no was available to her even when I would have. This is for everyone who has ever had someone count on your kindness as a resource they could spend without replenishment. This story is for you. My name is Claire. I'm 35 years old. I'm a middle school vice principal in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. My job, in practical terms, is to manage conflict. Every day, multiple times, with 12 and 13-year-olds who have not yet developed the emotional vocabulary for what they're feeling and therefore express it in whatever way is immediately available. I am very good at de-escalation, at finding the third option when 2 people are certain there are only 2, at making a room feel safer than it felt when I walked in. I am also, and this is the part that matters for this story, very good at documentation. I have been a school administrator for 8 years. I document everything: parent conversations, student incidents, staff disagreements, the specific sequence of events that led to any outcome I might later have to explain to a district supervisor or a parent's attorney. I document as a habit, as a reflex, as the trained instinct of someone who has learned that the thing you don't write down is the thing someone will later say never happened. Donna did not know this about me. Most people don't. I don't talk about my job much at family gatherings. I don't bring it into the specific social dynamics of my sister's marriage and the family that came with it. I am just Claire, the sister-in-law, the one with the nice house in a good school district with a big backyard and a habit of not making things difficult. Donna had been counting on that version of me for 3 years. She was about to meet the other one. Comment the word document if you have ever kept track of something. Dates, conversations, sequences of events, without being sure yet why you were keeping track. Stay with me. My sister's name is Meg. She is 32 years old. She married Daniel Kowalski 2.5 years ago. Daniel is 34. He is a good man in most of the ways that count: patient, honest, hardworking, the kind of person who shows up when you need showing up and tries to do right by the people in his life. His one significant blind spot is his mother. Donna Kowalski is 61 years old. She is the kind of woman who has organized other people's lives for so long that she has stopped recognizing the organizing as an imposition. It is simply to Donna what she does. She manages, she coordinates, she makes decisions. The question of whether those decisions belong to her does not appear to arise. I had been watching Donna for 2.5 years, not suspiciously, just observationally. The way a school administrator watches a dynamic that hasn't yet become a problem but has the shape of one. The first time Donna did something without asking, it was small. She rearranged Meg and Daniel's kitchen while they were on their honeymoon. She had a key for emergencies. She used it to reorganize. Meg came home to a kitchen that had been improved, Donna said. Everything was better placed, more efficient. Meg said thank you. I noted it. The second time, it was less small. Donna signed Meg and Daniel up for a couple's Bible study at Donna's church without asking them. Just registered them, told them about it the week before it started, said she had been so excited to have them in the group. Daniel went twice to avoid hurting his mother's feelings. Meg went once and spent the drive home trying to find the words for what had bothered her about it. I noted that too. The third time, Donna gave Daniel's old bedroom furniture to a neighbor's kid without telling Daniel. The furniture was in storage at her house, so it was technically hers to give. But Daniel had mentioned twice that he might want it if they ever had a larger place. Donna said she hadn't remembered that. Daniel said it was fine. I had 3 notes. The fourth time was my kitchen. Let me tell you about my house because it matters. I bought my house 4 years ago, by myself, with 11 years of saving. From a vice principal salary that is not as large as most people imagine school administrator salaries to be. It is a 3-bedroom house with a backyard that I spent the first summer making into something I loved. I planted things. I built a small raised garden bed with my neighbor's help. I put in a patio with pavers. I laid myself over 3 weekends in August because I could not afford to have someone else do it, and I wanted it anyway. That backyard is the thing I am most proud of that has no audience. No one gives me a performance review on my backyard. No district superintendent evaluates my raised beds. It is just mine. Built with my own hands and my own time and 11 years of saving. And on a Saturday morning in October, there were folding tables on my patio that I had not put there. I put down my unfilled coffee cup. I went upstairs. I got dressed. I did not go outside yet. I sat on the edge of my bed for 3 minutes. This is a thing I do before I handle something difficult at work. 3 minutes. To decide what I want the outcome to be before I let any emotion have a say in my approach. What did I want the outcome to be? I wanted the party not to happen at my house. I wanted it to be clear, permanently, undeniably, in a way that did not have to be repeated, that my house was not a venue that could be booked without my knowledge. I wanted Meg to see it clearly, not to punish Donna, but because Meg had been softening Donna's edges for 2.5 years and deserved to know the full shape of what she was softening. And I wanted Donna to understand that the version of me she had been counting on, the quiet one, the accommodating one, the one who would rather not make things difficult, was not the only version. 3 minutes. Then I went downstairs, then I made my coffee, then I called Meg. Meg picked up on the second ring. She said, "Hey, what's up?" I said, "Are you aware that there are tables in my backyard?" Silence. Then, "What?" I said, 2 folding tables. Someone is setting up chairs. This is for a party, I assume. Were you going to tell me about this party? Another silence. Longer. Then, "Claire, I don't know anything about a party at your house, I swear." And here is the thing about knowing your sister. I believed her. Completely. Immediately. Because Meg has many qualities and deception is not one of them. She has the specific transparency of a person who has never developed a talent for hiding things because she never needed one. I said, "Donna." Meg said nothing for a moment. Then, "How many people?" I said, "I don't know yet. There are 2 tables in my backyard and a woman setting up chairs who I have never seen before." Meg said, "I'm calling Daniel." I said, "Meg." She said, "I know. I'm calling him right now. Give me 5 minutes." She hung up. I drank my coffee. I looked out the window at the woman in my backyard who was now opening a third chair. I took out my phone. I opened my notes app. I typed Saturday, October 14th, 7:43 a.m. Linda's text, 7:51 a.m. Tables observed. Chair setup in progress, 8:04 a.m. Called Meg, 8:05 a.m. Meg, unaware, 8:06 a.m. Meg, calling Daniel. I did not know yet if I would need those notes. I wrote them anyway, because I always do. Meg called back in 9 minutes. She said, Daniel says his mom mentioned this weeks ago. He thought she'd talk to you. She told him you were fine with it. It's his uncle's retirement party. 40 people. I said, 40 people. Meg said, I'm so sorry, Claire. I had no idea. I said, I know you didn't. Did Daniel know his mother hadn't asked me? A pause. Then, I think he assumed she had. I said, did it occur to him to verify that? She said, Claire, I said, I'm not angry at Daniel. I'm asking a practical question. Did anyone think to check whether the person whose house this party was happening at had been informed? She said, no. I said, okay. She said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to call Donna. I had Donna's number because Meg had shared it at the beginning when she and Daniel started dating. I had called it exactly once before to confirm Christmas dinner details 2 years ago. I called it now. Donna picked up on the third ring. She sounded busy, the tone of someone mid-task. She said, Claire, hi. I was going to come by in about an hour to finish getting things set up. Is everything okay? I said, Donna, can I ask you something? She said, of course. I said, did you ask me if you could use my house for Daniel's uncle's retirement party? A pause, shorter than it should have been. She said, well, I mentioned it to Daniel. I said, I'm asking if you asked me. Another pause. She said, I thought it would be such a perfect space, and I know you're so generous. You counted on me not saying no loudly. And I'm telling you right now, clearly, directly, so that this is not something that can later be described as a misunderstanding. The party cannot happen here today. Silence. Long silence. Then she said, I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this. I said, I know you don't, and that is exactly what I'm trying to change. I hung up. Comment the word counted. If someone has ever counted on your kindness so consistently that they stopped seeing it as kindness and started seeing it as permission. I called the woman in my backyard through the window. She came to the back door. She was a caterer Donna had hired. She had a contract with Donna's name on it for services at my address. My address. On a contract she'd never shown me. I told her politely that there had been a miscommunication about the venue, that the party would not be happening at this location, and that she should call Donna for further direction. And it seemed like the kind of thing you'd be glad to help with, I said. Donna? She stopped. I said, you did not ask me. You knew that if you asked me, I might say no, and so you didn't ask. You told Daniel you had spoken to me. You made arrangements. You sent someone to set up tables in my backyard this morning. 40 people are coming here today. And I found out when my neighbor texted me at 7:43 a.m. to ask if I was having a party. Silence, a real one this time. I said, I need you to hear what I'm telling you, not what you thought I'd be okay with, not what you assumed, what I'm actually telling you. I did not agree to this. My house is not available today. The party cannot happen here. She said, Claire, people have already RSVP'd. I said, then they'll need to RSVP somewhere else. She said, it's Daniel's family, I said, and this is my house. Those two things can both be true at the same time. This is my house, Donna. I did not say yes. She was professional about it. She had been in the catering business long enough to understand that venue communications sometimes fall apart. She folded the chairs. She loaded the tables. She was out of my backyard in under 20 minutes. I watched from the window. Then I called my sister again. Meg said, how did it go with Donna? I said, the party isn't happening here. A pause. Then, how did she take it? I said, she said she didn't understand why I was being difficult. Meg made a sound. I said, Meg, I need to tell you something. Not about today, about the pattern today is part of. She said, okay. I told her, The kitchen reorganization, the Bible study registration, Daniel's furniture. The way each thing was done without asking, without checking, with the specific confidence of someone who has decided that not being told no is the same as being told yes. Meg was quiet through most of it. When I finished, she said, "I knew about some of those." I said, "I know," she said. "I thought she was just, that's how she is. She means well." I said, "Meg, meaning well and treating your space and choices as resources she can spend, those aren't the same thing. She meant well today. She also put tables in my backyard without asking. Both things are true." A long pause. Then, "I need to talk to Daniel." I said, "Yes." She said, "Are you angry at me?" I said, "No, but I need you to understand what's been happening, because it's been happening in your marriage too. And the difference between me and Daniel is that I'm not married to her. I can create distance. You have to live inside it." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I hear you." I said, "Good." She said, "I'm sorry she did this." I said, "I know you are. Talk to Daniel." Daniel called me at 10:15. He said, "Claire, I owe you an apology." I said, "You didn't know." He said, "I should have checked. She told me she'd talk to you and I just accepted that. I should have confirmed it with you directly. That's on me." I said, "Daniel, can I be honest with you?" He said, "Please." I said, "Your mother is a person who makes decisions without asking because the asking creates the possibility of no. And she has decided, based on a lot of experience with the people around her, that the people around her will not enforce their no loudly enough to matter. She told you she'd talk to me because if she told you she hadn't, you might have asked her to. And if she'd asked me, I might have said no. And if I'd said no, the party would need a different venue. So she removed every step where no was possible. That is not a mistake. That is a system." Silence. A long one. Then Daniel said, "How long have you been watching this?" I said, 2.5 years. He said, "Why didn't you say something?" I said, "Because it wasn't my place to tell you how to manage your relationship with your mother. But today, it happened to me. In my house. With tables in my backyard. So now I'm saying something." He said, "What do you need from me?" I said, "I need you to have a conversation with your mother that makes it clear that my house is not a venue. That my agreement is required before my property is used. That Meg's agreement is required before decisions that affect her are made. Not because I'm angry, because this will keep happening unless the system changes. And the system will only change if she understands that the people she's been counting on are going to start saying no loudly enough to count." Daniel said, "You're right." I said, "I know." He said, "I'll talk to her today." I said, "Thank you." He said, "Claire?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Meg is lucky to have you." I said, "I know that too." Daniel talked to Donna that afternoon. I was not there. I did not ask for a transcript. I have learned in 8 years of middle school administration that some conversations need to happen in rooms you are not in. What I know is this. Daniel called me at 4:15 and said the conversation had happened. That Donna was upset, that Donna felt she had only been trying to help, that Donna had cried. I said, "I'm not asking her to stop caring about people. I'm asking her to ask first." Daniel said, "I told her that." I said, "Good." He said, "She's going to need time to understand the difference." I said, "Most people do." He said, "Thank you for how you handled this." I said, "I handled it the way I would have handled it with a student's parent, which is to say, directly, without cruelty, but without apology either." He said, "Yeah." I said, "The party needs a venue. I hope she finds one." He said, "She moved it to the VFW hall." I said, "Good. Tell Daniel's uncle I said happy retirement." He laughed, small and tired. I said, "How's Meg?" He said, We have some things to talk about the patterns you described." I said, "Take your time. She knows I'm here." He said, "I know. That's the most important part." The party happened the following Saturday, at the VFW hall, 40 people, tables that someone else had set up, in a space that had been asked for. I was not invited, which was appropriate and expected and not something I lost any sleep over. Meg was there. She texted me a photo from the event, Daniel's uncle with a cake, surrounded by people who loved him. She wrote, "He had a great time. Also, Donna didn't speak to me for about the first hour, and then she hugged me and said she was sorry she'd put us in a hard position. She didn't say your name, but she said it." I wrote back, "That's a start." Meg wrote, "Are you okay?" I wrote, "Better than okay. My backyard is exactly as I left it. I'm sitting in it right now, reading." She sent back a sun emoji. I put my phone down and read my book in my backyard on my patio on the pavers I had laid myself over 3 weekends in August because I wanted it and it was worth it. 3 weeks after the party, Donna called me. I want to be honest, I let it ring. Then I picked it up. She said, "Claire, hi, do you have a few minutes?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I've been thinking about what happened, about what Daniel said, about the fact that I told him I'd spoken to you when I hadn't. And I want to say that I'm sorry, not for wanting to celebrate Harold, that was the right thing, but for the way I went about it, for assuming, for not asking, for telling Daniel I had when I hadn't." I said, "I appreciate that, Donna." She said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Why didn't you say something before? There were other times. Daniel told me about the things you'd noticed. Why did you wait?" I thought about the honest answer. I said, "Because they weren't happening to me directly. They were happening to Meg and Daniel, and that was theirs to address on their timeline. But when the tables appeared in my backyard, it became mine, and I handled mine." She was quiet. Then she said, "That's very fair." I said, "I know." She said, "I think I've spent a long time believing that if I wanted something for someone, that counted as asking." I said, "Yes, I think that's an accurate description." She said, "It isn't the same thing." I said, "No, it really isn't." She said, "I'd like to do better." I said, "I believe you, and I'll be here to notice when you do." There was a pause. Then she laughed, small and genuine, and said, "That sounds like something a school administrator would say." I said, "It absolutely is." She laughed again. It was the most honest conversation I had ever had with her. Comment the word honest. If you have ever had a conversation with someone you had been careful around for years, that was the first one where both of you said the actual thing. I want to tell you the lesson in plain language. Not dressed up, not wrapped in a metaphor, just said. There is a kind of person who is not cruel, who is not trying to harm you, who genuinely, truly, in their own understanding of themselves, is only trying to help, and who has learned, through years and years of people accommodating them, adjusting around them, not saying the thing directly, keeping the peace at the cost of the peace, that their wanting something for you is the same as your agreement, that your silence is consent, that your kindness is a resource, that your not saying no loudly is a yes they can spend. And the only thing that changes this understanding is the moment when the person they've been counting on says clearly, directly, without cruelty and without apology, "No, this is mine. You did not ask." And not asking does not count as asking. That moment is uncomfortable. It will be called difficult. It will be described as overreacting. There will be tears, real ones, probably. There will be a period where the person feels wronged even though they were the one who put tables in your backyard. But the moment matters, because every time we absorb what we should have named, every time we smooth over what we should have addressed, every time we protect someone from the consequence of counting on us too freely, we are not being kind. We are teaching them that there is no consequence, and they will count on us even more freely next time. The kindest thing you can do for someone who uses your kindness as a resource is to let them learn that the resource has limits. Not limits they hit after years of accumulation. Limits they hit the moment they go past them. That is not cruelty. That is the most honest form of care available. Some people will tell you that setting limits is selfish. Those are usually the people counting on you not to. My backyard is not famous. Nobody has written about it. Nobody has given me an award for it. But I am sitting in it right now. My chair, my pavers, my raised bed with the tomatoes that didn't take, and the herbs that did. And I'm thinking about what it means to have a thing that is yours. Not yours in a way that requires defending. Not yours in a way that needs to be announced. Just yours. Built slowly. Over time, with your own hands, and what it means to decide what happens in it. 40 people did not come here today. 40 people went to the VFW hall and celebrated a man who worked hard for a long time and earned a retirement party. I am genuinely glad for him, and I am sitting in my backyard in the specific quiet of a Saturday morning that belongs entirely to me. Both things at the same time. That is what saying no when you mean no makes possible. Welcome back to Unspoken Stories, where the quietest boundaries are the ones worth the most when you finally draw them. Here is the value I want to leave you with today, because this story is not just a story. Every single one of you knows a Donna. Maybe Donna is your mother-in-law, maybe she is your mother, your boss, your colleague, your oldest friend, the neighbor who assumes, the family member who decides. Every single one of you knows the specific feeling of watching someone make a decision that was yours to make and choosing not to say anything because saying something would cost more than absorbing it. I want to tell you something about that choice. The cost of absorbing it is not zero. It looks like zero. In the moment, it often feels like zero. It's just a kitchen. It's just a Bible study. It's just furniture. It's just a party. But the cost accumulates. And what accumulates is not bitterness, though that can happen too. What accumulates is a story that the other person is telling themselves. The story that says, she's fine with it. He doesn't mind. They would have said something if it was a real problem. Every time you absorb it, you are adding a chapter to that story. And the story they tell themselves determines what they do next. The only edit available to you is the one you make out loud, direct, clear, without cruelty, without apology. I need you to understand that saying no is not the end of a relationship. It is an honest beginning. Type yes in the comments if you have ever needed to hear that your no is allowed, that your space is allowed, that your agreement is required, that your kindness is a gift, not a resource, that not asking is not the same as being given permission. Type yes. I read every comment. Every single one. And if this story found someone you love, someone who is being counted on past the point of being asked, share it with them. Tell them. Your backyard doesn't have to have tables in it that you didn't put there. Subscribe. There are more stories. The herbs in my raised bed are doing very well this year. I'll see you in the next one.